Hi everyone, thanks for watching. I'm Jordan Bateman, the Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association, the mighty ICBA, ICBA. And I'm joined today by a special guest, Kris Sims, the BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. How you doing, Kris?
Excellent. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming. First of all, obviously the CTF, near and dear to my heart. I spent 6 years in your job previous to joining ICBA, fighting the good fight for lower taxes, less waste, more government accountability. See, the words just kind of roll off. You never forget.
You mumble them in your
sleep.
sleep.
Never forget, exactly. Lower taxes, please, please, please. But you've been there now a year. Tell me how you're enjoying the CTF and meeting the poor, beleaguered taxpayers of British Columbia.
It's been absolutely awesome. And first off, thank you so much for handing me your shoes so graciously.
No problem.
They're very big ones to fill. And without fail, every time I meet somebody new in this sector, they'll say either, oh, nice to see that you've taken over from Jordan, you've got big shoes to fill, or if they're a politician, they're wincing, saying, please be nicer to me than Jordan was.
It's evil.
But
the goat horns.
We're dedicated to the same thing,
yes.
And that is, regardless of party, regardless of stripe, that is lower taxes, less waste, and more accountable government. And so some of the major fights that we've had this past year is based on affordability.
Yeah.
So that's constantly the buzzword here in BC, but what we do have is a power to change that through government. So, for example, the ridiculously high cost of gasoline is partly because of gas taxes.
Big gas taxes.
You might have seen that with Jordan starring in that.
Yeah, let's start there and talk about that, because that obviously is something the CTF, we've worked on that for decades, literally decades. 20 years, I think the first gas tax honesty day was held. In BC now we're up to 52 cents a litre in the Lower Mainland in gas taxes. Carbon tax increase next year.
Yes.
A TransLink tax increase next year, thanks to John Horgan giving him the powers to do it.
Yep.
And can I just debunk one thing?
Sure.
That always bugs me. Ladies and gentlemen, do not pretend that John Horgan does not have a hand in these gas tax increases. He literally gave the TransLink mayors the power to increase taxes, and guess what the TransLink mayors did? They increased taxes. So he handed them the loaded gun with which they're shooting you. So do not pretend for 1 second that John Horgan is not somehow culpable in at least 50% of the way for this gas tax increase. Sorry, that was just a little...
No, it's completely valid, and he always tries to wiggle out from underneath that. And it's absolutely true.
Exactly, exactly. So there is the gas tax increases coming. How are we gonna turn the tide? Like, I feel like federally we're seeing the tide turn against the carbon tax. Certainly Trudeau's imposition of a national one. Do you feel like it's starting to hit the grassroots in BC, the average taxpayer, that this is a big cause of inaffordability?
I do.
Unaffordability?
It's unaffordability.
Unaffordability.
We just finished doing a tour through the Kootenays and the Okanagan, and I was speaking with community leaders, meaning the mayors, city planners, you name it, and businesses there. And the amount that they're paying in fuel surcharges to get anything delivered out that way from the Lower Mainland is strangling them. I just finished speaking with a businesswoman who's owned her shop since the 1990s. She used to have last year a charge of about $25 for her fuel surcharge of getting her special card stock delivered from Metro Vancouver out to her shop in Kelowna. Now it's $100. So, you know, trying to make ends meet in that climate just doesn't help. And so what we're saying is we can rail all day about the actual cost of gasoline, but what government can do is reduce the taxes on gasoline. And that's why we called for the elimination of the carbon tax, the federal excise tax, and the GST tax on tax.
Yes.
If they did that, that would save you 25 cents per litre and about $20 on an average fill-up.
It'd be almost like we're in Edmonton.
Exactly. Yeah. And what I always try to tell people when they're saying, oh, well, look at the beautiful world-class city we live here in Vancouver, and we've got transit. You know what? There's this place called Seattle in Washington State that is also a world-class West Coast city. They also have a big transit system. Their average cost is $1.08 Canadian. Downtown. I'm not picking little suburbs areas. It's downtown Seattle, average $1.08 Canadian. How do they do it? Because they don't ruin people through taxes.
Yeah, actually, I looked at this a couple of years ago, and 95% of the difference in price between Canada and the U.S. was taxes.
Exactly. So, and you can fight back.
Yeah, exactly. And we can unelect these guys. That's the great thing. Like, you could hold a gun to these guys' head, the proverbial gun that he just gave the TransLink mayors. We could actually turn it on them and say, either you cut taxes or you're gone.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we've told our supporters too.
Big issue. That's a big issue for our contractors, obviously. We don't have the luxury of toting tools on SkyTrain or jumping the West Coast Express with your welding kit in the morning morning. You have to have a truck. You have to have a vehicle. You know, it's like the prerequisite of virtually every job in construction in the province of British Columbia. So it's a big issue.
For tradespeople specifically, actually, if you take a look at just the carbon tax, I sat there and did the math one morning. Say you've got one of those Ford diesel Super Duties, the bigger trucks that you see lots of tradespeople using. That is $17.50 per fill-up just in the carbon tax. Yep.
Excellent. All right, well, there you go. And kind of playing off that ICBC, I want to talk about this because there's very few organizations out there talking about the auto insurance monopoly in British Columbia. The CTF is one of them. Certainly the BC Liberals have some credibility problems when they talk about anything to do with ICBC, given their recent history running the corporation. But you know, Kris, you launched that 70s campaign, which was you know, pointing out that ICBC was an interesting construct for the 1970s, but we've come a long way since then. We don't dress that way anymore. We don't build gremlins like that anymore. You know, we don't act like it is the 1970s in any way in British Columbia, except when it comes to car insurance. So how are you enjoying this ICBC campaign?
It's a fun campaign because you either laugh or you cry. And so we try to laugh a little bit about it. That's why I do my Darla the driver thing. I've got a big perm wig. I'll put on my platform shoes because, as you say, I'm pointing out the fact that this sucker harkens back to the era of the Pinto and the Gremlin, and it's time to update it. And so what we're pleading with people is to understand that other drivers in other provinces don't live like this.
Yes.
They are not herded into a big
Kris, you
room.
moved to BC a year ago.
Right?
And give me your car insurance experience.
Oh my gosh, the sticker shock is outrageous. Okay, full disclosure, I'm a 40-year-old married mother of 2. I literally drive a Camry. So I am your driving stereotype. Perfect driving record.
In fact, you're the one person on earth that every insurance company would love to insure because you will have no claims.
That's right. I have 0 claims. So back when I was in Nova Scotia and Ontario, we insured 2 cars, our house, our content insurance for around $150 a month. Then I moved here, and you can barely afford the insurance cost on 1 vehicle. That's just a personal example. I was speaking with a shop owner.
Oh, you must be wrong.
Right, I must be wrong.
Come on.
We have the
How do you know this?
Because it's a fact. And so I was speaking with a shop owner in Langley who moved here from Montreal. You think Ontario and Nova Scotia are cheaper. He moved here from Montreal. He said he couldn't believe it. His car insurance in Montreal used to be $35 per month.
Yeah.
He moved here, no claims. He can't believe it. He thought he was seeing an extra 0 for no reason. And what I'm trying to explain to people is that other people don't put up with this garbage. So if you take a look at our cousins over in Alberta, using a very clear example.
Are they still our cousins, or have they kicked us out of the family?
Right? We're almost there.
Yeah, okay.
We're sitting at the kiddie table.
We love Alberta. Alberta, if you go, take us with you.
Please come across the
Anyways,
Rocky
yes.
Mountains. So if you take a very concrete example, everybody's out in their campers, right? It's summertime. Take your average Class C camper, year 2000, worth about $10,000. The ones you see for rent all the time.
Right.
If you are a perfect driver and you insure that thing in Burnaby, it's going to cost you $1,400 to insure it for the year. If your cousin in Calgary, the same level of driving, the exact same vehicle, insures it there, $400 a year. $1,000 difference. Why? Because he gets to shop around and you don't. And so that is what we're trying to stress through our campaign. Also, we're there as translators. You know how in Star Trek they always turn on the universal translator? Whenever you hear politicians speak, you need to flick on that universal translator. And a key moment during last week's announcement of good drivers will pay less, bad drivers will pay more, is when EB said repeatedly, good drivers will be better off than they otherwise would have been. That means that you're getting less of an increase, not an actual decrease.
Yes, yes. I think Mike Smith did a great job actually debunking that.
He did.
And, you know, you're hand EB. Like, EB's a smart guy.
Yes.
So he comes out, he brings us out like a year ahead of time. And, oh, we're going to reduce rates, and oh, this is great. But then you actually look at the fine print and realize, wait, no one's getting a cheaper deal. I'm worried because, well, it's bizarre to me. So I think, I mean, well, you just mentioned that you're a mom of 2. We have 3 kids. We have a minivan. From time to time, probably once a month, maybe-ish once a month, maybe less, my parents will come and watch the kids and take them somewhere in our minivan because it's more comfortable for all the kids. Well, now I've got to register grandma and grandpa as special drivers on this thing and pay for, you know, whatever their history is. Now, fortunately, they have good history, but that's not great. I also have a 15-year-old daughter who's about to start driving, who is a very responsible kid, saving her money up. I mean, she's got her first job this summer. She's got more disposable income than I do. She's, you know, saving her money for a car. She bought a computer, and now she's going to save for a car. Well, you know, her insurance, we talk about unaffordability and screwing millennials and young people. ICBC, what David Eby announced on last week, is absolutely going to gut kids. And, you know, it's just the way, if you were a conspiracy theorist, you'd say, oh, the NDP want to socially engineer people into transit, never having a car, because, you know, maybe they're more likely to vote for them that way.
Yes, and they're easier to control.
Certainly this money, you know, certainly the cost involved kind of makes you wonder. And again, I circle back to our contractors, our small business people. Drive in on Highway 1, as I do most days, and you see, you know, contract vehicle after contract, some union, some not, some open shop, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're going to work. All of those people are going to be dinged more. And if you're a company and you have a guy, you know, lots of companies rely on 22, 23, 25-year-old young guys to drive their trucks, their rates are going to go way up.
Exactly. And keep in mind also that when they talk about the highest auto insurance rates in all of Canada, which we have, it's about...
Congratulations. Highest gas prices and highest auto rates.
We're number one.
Yeah.
So it's about $1,700 per year.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that we're number one, we're the highest, when 80% of us get a 40% discount.
Yes.
Those are some pretty wide goalposts. Just wait till they start moving them and deciding on who is and who is not a good driver any longer, and how high your insurance rates will go up. This is all tied into the fact they've now moved red light cameras over to photo radar cameras. Yeah. They'll start being able to collect money that way. Just wait until they start deciding that you're no longer a good driver. Yeah. How much will we be paying then? These are really key changes that they're making there.
Yeah, another little underreported change is they're going to still ding you with an accident claim, even if you paid for it yourself. So you have a little fender bender in the parking lot and it's $500 or $700, you pay it out of pocket. They're actually going to now use that against you and say, well, in the future you're more likely to have another accident.
Yes, it goes on your permanent
Even
record.
though you've paid for it yourself, they've had no money's exchanged hands with ICBC.
Exactly, but they're still in your business and they're still going to ding you for it.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So ICBC, you know, you'll say, oh, Kris, what you're saying is you want privatization. And we can have that, it'll devour us, you know, the privatization of ICBC. Kris, I know for a fact that you do not promote privatization of ICBC. Tell us about the innovative model the CTF has come up with, how to solve our insurance problem.
So we have a brilliant idea. So take ICBC as it is right now.
Please take it.
Yay, please. Change it into a co-op, similar to a credit union, okay? So that the drivers here in British Columbia who earnestly like that form of insurance, and some people do, can choose it. They can stick with that form of ICBC, very similar to a credit union or very similar to something like Mountain Equipment Co-op, and they can go that way. Next to that, new co-op, open that up to competition. Then you allow BC drivers to shop around and be able to actually afford their insurance and find lower rates. This is twofold. Number one, it gives you choice. You can either stick with ICBC if you like it the way it is, or you can shop around. And two, because you're shopping around, you can bundle your insurance and find lower rates, as lots of people do in Ontario, Nova Scotia, elsewhere here in Canada. You get a much lower rate. And people are competitive. Just imagine, this is what I'm trying to explain to people here in BC who have Stockholm syndrome when it comes to ICBC.
They still know anything different.
But imagine if the government owned the grocery store. And it was only one grocery store.
But they own the liquor store already.
Exactly. And look what we pay. We pay through the nose, right? And we don't have the
beer
selection.
For me.
No, exactly. There's no choice. So just imagine, if you will, comrade, if the government owned the grocery stores, what kind of quality food would you have? What kind of prices would you have? It's no wonder that we're stuck with this dumpster fire that is ICBC. And so that's why we're pleading with them. If you like ICBC, don't tow it to the scrapyard, just give it a full overhaul and then put it on the raceway next to the other companies and let them compete.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, totally. The co-op thing is a great way around it. I'm part of a credit union, which is essentially a co-op.
Yes.
You know, there's co-ops all over the province, Mountain Equipment, Otter Co-op, well-known groups. They all seem to function fine. And there's you actually have more engagement in it because you feel like you're an owner. Whereas now we feel like a victim.
Exactly, and you've got no choice. And a great addition to changing it into a co-op means that it's taken out of the hands of politicians.
Yes.
So that no longer is it a crowned corp that they can reach into and take money out of if they choose or choose not to. It's owned by the drivers who've chosen it, so they don't have any access to it anymore.
What if the biggest problem with ICBC is the fact that we have politicians running it?
Imagine.
It seems logical, doesn't it?
But wait, there's more.
There's more. All right, let's talk about a couple other quick issues. Employers' health tax. This is one that's going to land on January 1st. Obviously, the CTF was a huge, one of the big public policy victories of the last 7 years was getting all the parties to agree to actually eliminating the medical services premium tax.
Well done.
Yes,
good job,
it was a good
Jordan.
job. Half off right away, so that's good. That's done. The problem is this last half, the NDP have kind of, not kind of, they've reneged on the deal and instead are going to have an employer health tax and an MSP for some reason for a full year simultaneously before the MSP finally.
That's how they balance their budget.
Finally disappears. So, employer health tax is going to be huge for job creators. I imagine this is not going over well.
No. So our supporters are up in arms about this. A lot of them are business people. A lot of them are retirees, and they're shocked, frankly, by this new bill that's going to be coming down the pipe. They're also upset by the fact that it is a double dip, as you point out, which is unfair. And another element of this that a lot of people, including journalists, haven't thought about that much is municipalities.
Yes.
So pretty much every decently sized municipality in British Columbia is now going to be hit with a healthcare tax bill. Thank you very much. So everything from Kamloops to Kelowna to Cranbrook, you name it, are now being given a healthcare tax bill that they weren't consulted about. And so now it's up to them to partially fund healthcare, which is a provincial responsibility.
Yeah.
And so the mayors of these towns are calling us and saying, what gives? How can you just download this to the municipalities and you're not even offering us any more funding or you're not being fair? And so that's why we've got a petition out against it, we've got a campaign out against it, and we're urging people to push back on this because as you rightly pointed out back in your fight over the MSP, so much money is being wasted administering these darn things that it's hardly even worth to impose the tax in the first place.
Yeah.
And there's a better way of going about to fund healthcare.
Yeah, I think Surrey estimates a couple $1 million. I think Langley was $1 million. And put that in context, that's a 2% tax increase for property taxes. So it's actually worse because, unfortunately for people, not only will you have to pay, if your employer will pay the employer health tax, not only will your municipality pay, the regional district has to pay.
That's right.
And labor is the #1 cost for all of these government organizations, universities, school boards, regional districts, and municipalities. It's labor that really is a huge chunk of your tax bill. People, I think it's capital projects. It's not. No. Most capital projects are funded through development, especially in the Lower Mainland where there's growth. It is actually the labor to run all of these operations. So that's going to be a big problem. I think January is going to be a very, the NDP are not going to enjoy January.
No. Because
this is going to finally hit. The bills are going to start arriving. People are going to be paying MSP along with employer health tax. And it's going to be quite a loud cacophony as people realize exactly what's going on.
And we roll into the budget after that.
Yeah, it couldn't happen to a nicer government, by the way. Okay, and then we go into the budget. And I've been thinking a lot about property transfer tax because the market is slowing. The NDP essentially said that the property transfer tax revenue would grow by about $100 million in the year we've just concluded, and then $100 million next year to about $2.2 billion a year for the provincial government. Here's the problem. It looks like real estate sales are down at least 20%, maybe as much as 25%. So it's still in the first few months of this downward trend, but because of some rules, because of extra taxes that the province has put on, but also because of some of the rules put in by the federal government, sales have slowed. If we are short 25% of property transfer tax revenue, you're talking about a hole in the budget of $550 million. You add that to the cost overruns for firefighting this year, which will be probably another $80 to $100 million. All of a sudden, you're talking about a $650 million hole in the budget for a government that does not have that kind of contingency fund.
No, they've got next to nothing for it.
Are we talking about the D word in February?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see one.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to do one in their first time out, and they used partially the MSP double dip in order to cover over that and not run one. But I think they're going to try in their second year, their second budget. I think they're going to risk it. I think they are going to run one.
Yeah, the deficit's coming. They also are kind of fine-tune the speculation tax slightly, so we're bringing in less money than expected there. Their school tax will not bring in the same amount of money if housing costs have gone down. Assessments will drop. That won't bring in the same amount of money. So all these things are kind of circulating out there. It'll be very interesting. My sense is they'll go into the budget, and if they do run a deficit, they'll try to blame it on firefighting. Hopefully the media is smart enough to redirect and realize, wait a minute, you've got this huge reduction in revenue. The other thing that doesn't get reported from the last budget is that they increased taxes by $5.5 billion.
Yes.
They spent $5.5 billion, like every penny of that they spent.
Exactly.
So they don't really have a lot of room to continue to increase taxes. Although I hate to challenge the NDP to that, because they'll find it.
They'll find a way to increase more taxes. Yes,
Yeah.
we were surprised last time in the budget.
Yes. So yeah, deficit coming. Maybe certainly higher taxes to cover it off. It'll be interesting to see how she squares that circle. Carol James. Okay, last thing I want to talk about. It's an issue near and dear to ICBA's heart. Project labor agreements. This is the union-only contracting on the Patello Bridge, on the highway east of Kamloops towards the Alberta border. You're talking about, well, the funny thing is, only 7%. They say 4 to 7% more costs. We know that will be at least twice that. You add that to the growing price of steel because of tariffs, thanks to Justin Trudeau trying to protect the eastern steel mills. You're talking about major construction costs overruns at a time we're about to embark on a building project for Patello, Surrey Light Rail, and the Arbutus subway. So, should taxpayers should we cry?
You should pray, cry, and frankly call your mayor, call your MLA, and write them an email. Be firm and be clear and tell them that you're not going to put up with this. If you want to, take a recent article and post it with your email and say, why are we paying for this stuff? So a really good recent article that went into real detail about what some of these contracts are deciding is literally saying that you can't repeat the work crew site lunch or dinner as seafood, chicken, or beef. You can't repeat that twice in 1 week. No. And you need to have better elbow room. Apparently we're too close to each other right now.
Yes, we've been rolling those out one by one on our ICBA page.
Exactly, and you can't have pudding and Jell-O.
There was a certain size of pillow you had to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like a joke, but it's actually true. And so they're imposing some of these camp rules, which used to be for things like really remote sites, like mining and logging, where you're way out in the boonies. You need to have that hot food. We get it. These folks are in Burnaby. They're downtown.
So I think we should clarify that. That's more for the Highway 1 project.
Okay.
And one of the things that really hasn't been reported is that they're going to deem anyone outside of 100 kilometers away as a non-local worker.
Okay. Oh.
So in the Lower Mainland, that's fine because we've got a bunch of trades workers down here. Millions of people. Some of them are bound to be able to weld. This is going to be a big problem in some of these not unpopulated or sparsely populated areas between Kamloops and the Alberta border because you just can't get the critical mass of 100 million, of people you need within 100 kilometers. What that means is they'll need work camps.
Yes.
And they won't be housing temporary foreign workers. They'll be housing other British Columbians who normally would just, pay and rent a hotel and work there or whatever. Yes. Instead, they'll be housed in these work camps.
Similar things happened at the Inland Island Highway Project, where they had real trouble finding qualified tradespeople that met all of their new requirements within 100 kilometers.
Exactly.
It's almost identical work requirements.
And anytime you shrink a labor pool, it costs more to hire those folks. So this is the problem there, and we will continue to fight it. You can go to johnsoldout.ca for the ICBA's very pointed letter to Premier Horgan on this issue. All right, anything else you guys are working on you want to promote?
Those are the main issues.
What's Woody got going these days?
He's got nothing to do. No, his main thing he's doing right now is actually the escalator tax on alcohol. And he's really taking this fight. And as has been highlighted now by the newly elected Premier Ford in Ontario with his Buck a Beer strategy, it's interesting seeing all of these craft breweries coming out of the woodwork and looking down their noses at people who drink Labatt Blue, who drink Molson Canadian, and who in BC here would drink the equivalent of Kokanee or Lucky Lager. And so they're coming out and saying you cannot possibly create a beer worth drinking for $1 per beer. Well, this is part of the point, is that these same craft breweries have no problem taking taxpayer money in the form of corporate welfare. And
not like $10.
No, like $800,000. And in one case, one of these craft breweries had taken more than $1 million over the course of 2 years.
Yes.
And they're spitting on people who want a buck of beer, and they want lower prices for their beer in Ontario. And so what we're dovetailing it with right now is our escalator tax campaign. And so Aaron Woodrick's doing great work there, and he's pointing out that about 50% of your cost of beer is taxes.
Sons of...
Right? And just wait, there's more. In wine, it's between 70 and 75%. per wine
Yeah.
is 70 to 75% taxes. And just wait, for the hard liquor, you might need it after
I
this.
need some scotch.
You need some scotch after this. More than 80% is taxes for a bottle of vodka, scotch, rum, you name it. And so our point here is that the escalator tax has now been attached to beer, wine, and spirits. That means it goes up every year forever. No consultation in the House of Commons, none of that fun stuff.
What a world.
Right? And so we've actually got a really fun rap video that's out right now, and it's talking about how you only drink Canadian beer, you just can't afford to buy it here. And it's pointing out that they pay 50% less for their beer across state line because, again, taxes. We started with gasoline and we ended with beer. Same reason.
But Christine Van Guy must feel like she's died and gone to heaven as Ontario director.
Oh, it's so much fun.
She's getting married this weekend, I think.
Right,
or
yes,
yeah.
yes,
Congratulations
very,
to
very
CVG
soon.
on the nuptials.
She looks absolutely fantastic. So really happy times
But yeah,
here.
she must like talk about a complete culture shift.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of going the opposite direction here.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Send help.
Yes, send help. Christine, don't forget us out here, the left coast. All right, Kris, thanks for being here. Taxpayer.com for all your stuff.
You betcha. Thanks so
where
much.
are you on Twitter?
I'm at Kris_Sims.
Oh, the dreaded underscore. I'm at Jordan Bateman, no underscore. I was an early adopter. I probably could have gone at Jordan B. I was like such an early adopter. But
Were you really?
I screwed that up.
See, I dragged my feet.
regret it.
My first tweet ever was like, okay, fine. I'm
Yes.
joining.
I think mine was, so what's this for? Yeah, still wondering, Anyways, at Kris_Sims, at Jordan Bateman. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon on another ICBA conversation.